My name is Arlette Preston, and I'm running for the Fargo City Commission. Well, I'm running because I would bring a new and diversified experience and perspective to the City Commission. I have a nursing background. I have had a business for the last 16 years and have served on the school board as well as the City Commission before. So I would be able to enter into this with the, hitting the ground running, and my major focus would be, I think, quite different than what the City Commission currently is probably focused on. First of all, I would work to ensure thriving neighborhoods, thriving families, and thriving workforce. So some of the issues that I'd be most interested in working on: childcare, access and affordability, attainable and affordable housing for everyone who wants to either own and or rent, but certainly affordable housing. And the neighborhoods, especially the inner core, older neighborhoods, providing incentives for keeping older homes, keeping them up and improving them, as well as perhaps providing some property tax incentives for the elderly to try to keep them in their homes as long as possible. So there's some issues that I would bring, perspective that I would bring as a nurse, a mother, a business owner, that would be quite different, I think, than the current city commissioner. You know, the commission form of government, people may not necessarily understand the difference between commission and council form of government, but with a commission form of government, the commissioners are supposed to be quite active with the management and especially the strategic planning for the departments. And so that means that they really need to be pretty engaged. And each commissioner probably runs or has 4 or 5 departments in each portfolio, as well as serving on probably 7, 8, however many public commissions. So it's a heavy load, and it's a load that most people probably plan on it being probably a 4th, kind of a quarter-time position. So it's pretty tough to keep up with it. So yes, I would support bumping up the number to 7. I would also support some other changes perhaps in regards to how the commission represents the community. You know, this is something actually I've been working on for the last 1.5 years or so. North Dakota has had voting by mail in place for probably at least 2 or 3 years. And 33 out of the 50-some counties that we have in the state have been doing it before this. And actually, the counties that have implemented it love it. And the reason that they love it is that people don't have to drive to get to a precinct polling place. There's no confusion about which polling place you have to go to. And it's just much more convenient. So the participation rate, especially with the primary, goes way up with voting by mail. There are many other states that have already put this in place, and for primary elections, the increase in voter participation could be all the way up to 50% higher, or 50 percentage points higher. So the participation rate can go way up. Now in the general election, it's a little bit less because the participation rate is usually higher anyways. So yes, I would love to see it for every election. You know, what I'm more concerned about is the participation rate by voters in the election that selects the local leaders. And except for the county, all of the other local positions are decided in the primary. So, you know, whatever we could do to increase that participation rate. And moving it to the general election, doing a primary in general, like the county does, in my mind, is a better kind of scenario than having what we had in 2018, where only 11% of the Fargo population elected as city commissioners. That, in my mind, is a lot worse. I think people are very aware of local issues. And yes, it's a little bit difficult to find out how each candidate stands on some of those issues, especially when there are other races going on. But there are ways to get through to the public with your message. That's one of the changes that I would like to at least investigate. The county commission right now in Cass County has districts where where each district has a representative. They have to live inside that district. They're still voted at large, where everybody in the county still votes for those positions, but the person has to actually live inside that district. In my mind, that is a real good way to increase civic participation. You get to know your local representative better. They're probably going to be more accessible because they understand the local neighborhood issues. So yes, I would like to see that investigated and perhaps at some point put in front of the public for a vote. That, I guess, in my mind, would need to be investigated. I think even at the state level, they're talking about how do we put the boundaries for legislative districts together and how can we do that better. I would follow the lead, perhaps, of what happens with legislative districts. And that would take a little bit of work to try to figure out what those district boundaries should be and what they would look like. However, I have to say, the county has done it. The county did it probably 20 years ago, and it seems to be working really well. So, city government in Fargo has been pretty good about making sure that all of their meetings are pretty accessible in regards to they're taped and aired and people can access all their meetings. I think there's a couple of areas where the process that's being used isn't real transparent, and one of them is one of the biggest complaints that people have our property tax valuation process. So what value is assigned to your property is done pretty much in a black box. So that's one area that I think transparency, shining some sunlight on it would be good. Being able to translate that for the public so that they understand that process would be really good. Otherwise, I think the best way to increase transparency is to bring people in, the public, bring the public into the process as much as possible. And the city's been doing a fairly good job with that when it comes to putting plans together. The core neighborhood planning process right now is a good example. The consultants are really pretty good about reaching out to the public and getting input. The trouble is with transparency and then with involvement is that when you do ask for input, you need to use it and you need to implement what you've put together. So if you ask the public what they want, you put it into a plan and nothing happens, people can get very cynical very quickly. And that's one of my biggest concerns, is that that's happened way too often. So I do think the city commission their meetings are pretty accessible. They're taped, they're in the evening, they're live streamed. So other than the agenda probably coming out only a few days in advance, that would be the only thing probably that makes it a little bit difficult for people to know what's coming. But there are other commissions where it's a little bit more difficult. The Planning Commission meets during the day on a weekday. People working, it's tough to get to. There are commission meetings that happen inside city structure, like the Special Assessment Commission or Special Assessment Committee, the Public Works Evaluation Committee. There's a number of committees that are not well known. They are certainly, the meetings are posted, meeting notices are posted and all of that. So all the legal requirements are met. It's just that people may not know for sure if they can attend, when they meet, where they meet, those kinds of things. So there's some work that could be done there. Well, I guess it's as good as probably anything else. I'm thinking, right after work, most people, and I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people work during the day. If an individual works regularly in the evening, it's tough for them to get to. I guess I wouldn't have any other suggestions unless some kind of public survey was done, perhaps. That would be the only way to know if there's another time that would work better. I'm one who believes that public service is important. It's tough for individuals who have to work in a job that has probably a full-time job and serve in a role like this. So the closer that we can get to making it possible for individuals who cannot afford to go part-time or even maybe even quit a job to do something like this, I think would be really good. It would open up and widen out the individuals that could possibly seek a position, a public service position like this. So to answer your question in a word, yes. Well, okay, so I don't remember this from the last time that I ran, but we are now reporting expenses, which is a step forward. That's good. I think that I personally have decided not to take any kind of organizational contributions. I guess I'm thinking that if a person does take contributions from an organization, it needs to be reported, and that is, well, I guess only if it's over $200 that a person has to report it. So, and anything probably under 200 is somewhat not real significant for this type of a campaign. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that there's anything else that could be required, to be honest with you. I've not done a whole lot of research in the area though, so I do believe in candidates and commissioners, when they are elected, need to be impartial. So if receiving a contribution from an organization that has a special interest of some sorts, that's not good. I think one of the best ways to do that is to have representatives from districts where they work the neighborhoods. And there's no guarantee that having wards or districts, there's no guarantee that a commissioner would reach out more, but it would be easier for the public to access that individual. And you would get to know your ward or your district better than having to cover complete the entire city being 125,000 people. There's just no way you can understand or know the issues for the varied neighborhoods across the city. So I believe one way to increase civic engagement is to elect representatives from districts. My website is arletteforfargo.org. I'm on Facebook, Arlette Preston for Fargo City Commission. Yeah, that's basically it. And my contact information is on my website.